Welcome back to Outspoken, the podcast by Fem. I'm Steph, one of the founders, where we have honest, empowering conversations about topics that matter the most. Today, we're diving into a subject that affects so many people but isn't talked about enough: fertility struggles and the journey to parenthood. I'm joined by an incredible guest, Emma Haslam, founder of IVF Abroad. After facing her own challenges with infertility, Emma and her husband discovered the benefits of seeking fertility treatment abroad, where they found high quality care at a fraction of the cost. This life-changing experience inspired Emma to create Your IVF Abroad, a service that helps others navigate their own fertility journeys overseas with expert guidance, support, and a stress-free approach. In this episode, we'll be breaking down the realities of IVF abroad, why more people are choosing to go overseas for treatment, what the process actually looks like, and how Emma is helping to make fertility treatment more accessible for everyone. Whether you're considering IVF yourself or just want to learn more about fertility options beyond the UK, this conversation is one you won't want to miss. Hello, Emma. Welcome to Outspoken, and I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thanks, Steph. That was a great introduction. Thank you.
I say it to all my guests, Emma. I said, one day I'm going to write one about myself because I feel like everybody needs to hear a summary about themselves.
Yeah, from somebody else, 100%. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, no, I know we've spoke offline for about a year and a half now, and we're in the same kind of space, and we were just talking before we went live about meeting up at the fertility show in London in a couple of months. But you feel like you know someone just sometimes over Instagram.
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? Although I am just the same on Instagram as I am off Instagram, so I know what you mean, because the community is quite small, really, isn't it? The people that work in it, so you get to know people. You feel like you really know them when actually you've only met them online like this.
Yeah, which is so powerful, and really, like, we, over generations, we seem to have lost community, you know, when you go back to like the tribal times, and you know, they used to say, don't they, it takes a village to raise a child, and we seem to have lost that. So I do think, you know, as much as we kind of put social media down, I do like that benefit is that, you know, there is always somebody that you can feel like you can speak to or you feel heard. So
Definitely. There was none of that either when I was going through my own journey, and like I would have loved that. So we are lucky to have. There are some great sides to social media as well, aren't there?
There are. So thank you so much for being here today. And just to kick us off, we just wanted to talk a little bit about your personal journey and some challenges that you faced and sort of what led you to where you are in your career now. And I hear this often, so many people, their own experiences have led them to help so many others. And that's exactly what you do.
Yeah, exactly that. So back in 2014, probably a bit before that, myself and my then-to-be husband, Adam, started trying to conceive. And I think perhaps like lots of people, you don't necessarily overthink it at that point. You just think that it's something that happens easily enough-ish. We were about to get married. We're kind of casually trying, got married, began to really try, and then nothing was happening. And I'm trying to be succinct because it's not my biggest skill. So from there, we went to the GP, and in those days, it was a lot easier to get a GP's appointment. It was a lot easier to kind of get the baseline testing done and get things done fairly quickly. So we were very lucky in that respect. But what it did identify that there looked to be some male and female infertility factor issues. So we received a referral again in the day when it was very quick to get a referral through to gynecology on the NHS, and we were still quite positive at this point, because I think I just thought to myself, well, we'll just have IVF in inverted commas, not really understanding what that is or meant or anything or how hard it would be to get it, if you know, and that's what will happen if there's any problems. But we're still quite optimistic at that point. I think that wears off after a period of time. But we had some more investigations, and they were like, look, you're not going to conceive naturally. That was a massive thing to hear. But then we were also a bit like, well, we'll have IVF. And they were like, you can have IVF, but you're going to have to go away and lose like a considerable amount of weight to do that. And then you will only qualify for one round. And by the way, you know, even with IVF, you've probably only got a 3 to 5% chance of it working. We're like, okay, this is getting worse than we thought. And we did have both male and female infertility factors, and I was perimenopausal and in early menopause, should I say, at like 30, how old was I then? I don't know, 36. So a bit of a kicker. I did know that my mum and auntie and grandma had gone through early menopause, but it didn't really mean anything to me at the time. I'm one of four, so that didn't sort of click into place until this point in time where I thought, oh, right, okay. So we were sent away with no help, no support to go and lose this vast amount of weight. Like we're talking 38 kilograms, like not, huge amount of weight, despite at that time being otherwise fit and healthy. It was nothing to do with why we couldn't conceive, but everything to do with qualifying for NHS funded treatment. So off we went, and I did manage to lose that weight. I was really keen on doing it in a healthy way because I knew that it could affect egg quality, but actually it was a complete waste of time because it took a considerable amount of time for me to lose that weight, maybe 18 months, which actually isn't bad going, but all I did was lose time, because then when it came to me getting back in contact with them to say like, hey, I've lost this weight, they were like, oh, really sorry, but actually the rules in this area have changed since we last spoke. Nobody thought to tell me that. I suppose they don't, do they? But I was like, so I've been working to this arbitrary figure, working really hard, and all it did was waste our time. And actually when you are perimenopausal and early menopause, time was not what we had on our side. And I think that was probably the lowest point of the journey for us, because I just felt like, what a waste of time and energy. Like it takes a lot to lose that kind of weight, of which I put back on again because, but it had nothing to do with, as I said, it had nothing to do with why we couldn't conceive, and everything to do with time. And it was just so clear that it was just all about money, and had we lived like 5 miles down the road, I would have then qualified. And it was just, I was so angry at that point and upset and frustrated and stuck. Like we just didn't know what to do. We didn't have any money. Very kindly, my mum offered for us to move in with her, which I understand is a huge privilege, but also not ideal, right? As a newlywed couple, all the things that we loved to do, go on holiday, all that kind of stuff stopped while we began to save and look at other options. So we'd looked at surrogacy. That is very expensive, and I still really wanted to try and like carry a child and give birth to a child. That was important. But we looked at adoption as well. Didn't feel that was right for us at that stage. So it basically came down to we're going to need fertility treatment. But in the back of our minds was this whole like, well, you've only got a 3 to 5% chance of it working. And when we began to look into it, it's so expensive in the UK, and we just didn't find a clinic that we particularly vibed with. And it all felt very samey. And I'm not saying that this will be the same at every fertility clinic for every person, but this was our experience. And we didn't have any money anyway. So we're busy saving up, and it's a bit like, well, it's probably not going to work. And just something didn't feel right. I've no idea. I honestly can't remember the moment that made us look abroad. I suspect I was probably targeted by adverts. Yes. Adam and I met before I went on a big round the world travelling trip that he then came and joined me on. So we've both been very lucky that we've done quite a lot of travelling, which I think does make you open your eyes to other places. And I think sometimes we think that only in the UK can it be good healthcare, but that's not always the case. There are countries certainly that I wouldn't recommend people go to for fertility treatment, but there are also some fantastic places. So I think we probably were open-minded and probably got targeted by adverts online and began to just look into this world. But as we touched on in the beginning, there was no Instagram communities about this kind of stuff. There was no me doing what I'm doing. There was nothing. There was like some old threads on Mumsnet about stuff. So I had very little to go on. And had no idea what we were doing, but just could see straight away the cost differences. That was the first thing that I think probably attracted us. And just when liaising with the clinics, it just felt easier. It was more transparent, like more was included in their packages. It's easier to get the answers to questions quicker. And then a lot of them offered free consultations. And so we're just like, well, why not? Let's speak to some. But then that was also, quite stressful because we had no idea what we're doing. In the back of my mind, I'm like, is this safe? Is this the right clinic for us? And we didn't have any idea. But back then, we were vulnerable and didn't feel like the UK was right for us and for our budget. So found a clinic abroad. We didn't know necessarily if it was safe. it was all a bit on a wing and a prayer, which I do not recommend people do, but there was nobody to help us with it. And we had our treatment. We ended up using a donor, which wasn't mentioned to us in the UK. And the clinics abroad all categorically felt that that was our best chance of success, but would have supported us either way. So we ended up having 3 transfers, and on the 3rd transfer, I conceived twins. I sadly lost one of the twins when I was pregnant, and then gave birth to our son 6.5 years ago. And really wanted people to know that if they're going to go privately, that there are other options to consider, as well as having it in their home countries, that can be significantly cheaper, and in the right safe clinic that meets your needs can be a better customer service experience, offering you lots more options around testing and treatment. It can be really nice actually to be somewhere else, and that it's not the second-rate choice. It can be the first-class choice depending on like your needs, but you do need to know what you're doing. And that's how the idea of Your IVF Abroad came up. It was actually my husband was like, you need to do this because, like, you're right, people need to know there's this great option, but only when done right. So 5.5 years ago began Your IVF Abroad, and that's what's led me to do this today. And I really wanted to, I think like lots of people who struggle with infertility, I really want to take that really shitty period of my life and be able to use it positively to help other people. I feel like that then makes it worth it somehow. I mean, obviously we got the result of our son at the end of it, so it was worth it. But to be able to take that and use that positively is important to me, and to be able to have an impact, and to be able to, to have, like I say, have an impact, and to that ripple effect onto other people's lives as well is important to me. And I absolutely love what I do.
Amazing. I mean, what a journey. And like I said before, I hear this pretty much every guest has gone through something personally that's led them to either create education, service, a product. It's such a powerful thing that us women do, is like we go through something personally and then we almost want to prevent. And I suppose it's the mother in nurture, the nurture side in us. We don't want anyone else to go through it. So we're like, here's all this great advice. And I mean, you can have it from anything, can't you? A great Chinese takeaway you tell your friends, to a great new foundation. So it really is so powerful. So I just want to sort of unpick where we are today, because like you say, you know, when you were going through this, there was no support, there was no networks, there was no internet that had thousands and thousands of reviews, but we're in a very different place today. So how does Your IVF Abroad support people now? And what does that kind of look like for somebody? Because I think it's important to say, and I think you have touched upon this, is that it's only for a certain person. You've got to be, like you say, open-minded. You've got to see beyond the NHS. And I think we all, you know, as amazing as the NHS can be, we all have our pain points when it comes to it, and it normally is wait time. And I hear you with the postcode lottery. We have many conversations about people that have been infected and then actually lost rounds of IVF. One was my own sister. You know, when she started her IVF, it was 3 rounds, and then halfway through her first round, she was just told. She did take that to panel and got that overturned. But what does Your IVF Abroad look like today?
So effectively, I can help people in 3 ways. So I get some people who find a clinic abroad and then want that kind of practical, real-term support in holding their hand through, guiding them through the process of planning and all the logistics of planning and having your treatment. So sometimes people do that. Other people come to me because they want just my help to find a clinic that is safe, that truly meets their needs, because I believe that there is not a one-size clinic fits all. I also believe that if you can find a clinic that meets your medical needs, like if you've got unexplained infertility, you want answers, you know, if you need donation, if you have recurrent loss and miscarriage, you know, that different people have different things going on. It's so important because they're not all built the same. So, that meets your needs medically, meets your personality needs, so that going through this massively traumatic experience, irrespective of the result, will feel better if you're with the right clinic. And then also thinking about budget and understanding costs. So again, to make sure you then don't end up in a clinic where you then can't afford to have the treatment that you need. So I ask lots of questions to really get to know the person or people that I'm working with, to truly match their needs, get them discounted treatment. I'm independent, so I don't take any commission from clinics. So I think that's a big differentiator with me as well. It means I'm truly only ever on clients' sides. Helping people prepare for consultation if they need to go get tests and things done, and helping them with like a list of questions so that they can go to those clinics and come away and think, Emma's matched us and narrowed down that massive pool, and we know it's safe and we know it's suitable, but actually, which one of those three feels best for us? And only that person or people will know that. And those questions are there to give them that confidence as well, that they've also made the decision, not me, in who they should go with. So some people just want that help. Other people are unsure if they're going abroad, and they'll just book a quick call, and I will be very honest with them to help them to work out if it's right for them or not. Then I have other people who work with me from finding a clinic all the way through to completing their treatment. So everything that goes in that, in there that's involved, I'm with them. I'm copied into emails, like I am there with them, helping them with whatever they need. And then some people come and they take my course, which step by step works through the same process I work through one-to-one, helping people to work out which is the right country for them and their needs, clinic, understanding the process. They get access to my little black book of contacts to help them with everything they need to get, like medication and things like that. And then kind of like what to do, how to integrate back into their healthcare services in their home country. So there's something for everybody, from kind of like my free stuff, like my podcasts and my downloads. And I've got a free training that I'll mention later, so people can access that if they want to more. But everything from free up to kind of full one-to-one support and things in between. And I focus on Europe because that's kind of like my area of expertise, and that's where I've collaborated with clinics, where I've learned a lot more, and I've worked with hundreds of people now, so I get to see inside these clinics day in, day out, and if they do cut the mustard in what they say they're good at, and I know now where to go and check that a clinic's registered and regulated, so I can give people that sort of peace of mind, because it's huge, and it's not right for everybody to go abroad, and it's not just people who are being refused treatment on NHS that are going abroad now. It's people who are choosing it either as their first port of call, or people who've had failed rounds, let's say, for example, in the UK, and then they just want to go and get some different opinions. And I think one of the big things I say to people about the UK is we don't really get people from outside of the UK flying in to have fertility treatment here. But what we do get is people flying in from all over the world to Europe for their treatment. But it's got to be done properly. You've got to make sure you're safe, and it's got to be at the right clinic for you, and that can be overwhelming for people, and some people just couldn't even think about being away from home for the fertility treatment, and that is completely fair enough. It's got to be what's right for you when you're going to be going through this massive life-changing thing. But I think also another reason people are looking to go abroad, and I'm tangenting a bit here, is that unless you live in London, there's not a huge amount of clinics to choose from, and people are getting more savvy with, actually, is that the right clinic for us? So if you're going to have to travel from, Northern England down to London anyway, you might as well jump on a flight. And I think more people are beginning to think that, and people are seeing people like me who've done it. Other people are doing it. There are these communities now and things online, so people are talking about it. It's become more socially acceptable, less frightening. And people are beginning to realise that in the right country, in the right clinic, you can have exceptional healthcare that is going to, for 9 out of 10 people, cost you considerably less money, which either means you save money or you've got more money to having the kitty to hopefully get to the end result. So it's kind of supporting people from, do you want to go abroad? Is it right for you? Through to you going abroad, and what kind of help do you need in line with your budget and how much support you need or don't need.
It's absolutely great, Emma, how accessible you've made your services, because everyone has different budgets, so going from your free services, and you don't always see that. Sometimes you're over a barrel when it comes to fertility treatment. It's, if you want it, well, it's 10, 12, 15 grand. You have no choice. You want the baby, you sometimes think, I'll go into debt, or like you said, I'll move in with my parents. It's so not fair in that moment, and that can impact your mental health and your emotional well-being, relationships, everything. So it's really powerful that we have access to these things. So when I was preparing for this podcast, I did a little bit of research, spoke to a few ladies that have been TTC or currently are, about some common concerns when it comes to IVF abroad that I just wanted to unpick with you. So one of those were language barriers and cultural differences.
Yeah, great question. I love that. So what I would say is not every clinic everywhere abroad is set up to service international patients. So that's the first thing. So if you are trying to get in touch with one of those clinics, you are going to really, really struggle. So it's about finding clinics that are used to serving international patients. And then again, what I would say is even within those types of clinics, you will see variances of super fluent, everybody, some of, to good enough, but what good enough is depends on what your expectations are. So again, it's about finding the right clinic and about thinking about what you need. What I would say within that, though, is that you have to make sure that you are understood and they understand you. Now, sometimes in some clinics, that might be that your coordinator, which is the person that's at the end of your email looking after everything for you from a kind of administrative point of view while you're out of the country, and then when you go to the clinic, they're usually fluent. If the doctor isn't, as an example, is in a worst case scenario in the right clinic, then they should have that person there to be able to translate. But if in those cases where I've seen that, it's been that the doctor does understand, but they're not as confident necessarily at speaking English. If you think about it, they'll have people coming from all over the world. They can't speak every single language. Now, we are lucky being British or speaking the English language in that is usually the next language that they speak. But some might be more fluent in French. You know, they're not always fluent in every single language, but more commonly you see English as being one of the ones. So you should never be in a position where you don't understand or are not understood, and there should always be provision in there if that person isn't fluent thinking and fluent speaking. So the reality is it comes down to finding a clinic who services international patients and then looking at how that varies depending on the clinic and what your needs are. Some people say to me, like, we know it's not their first language, but as fluent as possible, please, Emma, as one of their, like, when we're looking at what they need in a clinic, that's super important to them. I've got other clients who are like, I'm not bothered if somebody's there translating, as long as they understand me and I understand them and I can understand the written emails, I'm cool about that. So again, it's that personal preference, because it's right to be concerned, isn't it? Because it's super important. We're not talking about just ordering a steak in a restaurant here and it might come out blue when you want it well done. You can send it back. This is important stuff. So you have to be understood and understand, and you have to be comfortable with a level of English at that clinic.
Yeah, perfect. And just moving on a little bit to price, because I know you've mentioned a couple of times that it was for you at the time a lot cheaper than IVF private, clinics in the UK and still is today. But what kind of difference is it? Like 30%? What kind of difference are we talking?
So the answer is it does depend. And I think what can be really hard for people is quite often when you look at clinics' websites, again, not all in the UK, there's a lot of things that you will need that they just don't include in their baseline price. So when you're looking at that versus going abroad, sometimes you think, okay, that doesn't look to be, we've got flights, we've got accommodation, we're probably not going to be saving that much money. But actually, in reality, there was some research done by the Fertility Action Network where they said that people on average in the UK were spending, including everything, including medication, about just under £14,000 a round, which is massively not what is on the websites of clinics in this country. So I think it's very hard to tell on paper, but in my personal experience and my experience of helping hundreds of people over the last 5 years, I would say that 9 out of 10 of my clients have either saved a significant amount of money, so thousands of pounds, even including everything, or they've paid the same. But that's the 1% of that, the 10%, of those people. 90% are saving money. Now, the cost differences can be anything from kind of £1,000 up to, if you're talking about donation, some people have saved like £10,000. So it depends on the clinic, what country, it depends on the treatment. I suppose it depends on how many times you need to go out there. But certainly for the vast majority of people, they save a considerable sum of money, even including flights and accommodation. Usually there's a lot more included in that baseline package price, less hidden things. And when you know the right questions to ask, which is something I help people with, then you can get a really accurate idea of budget. Whereas in the UK, my client's experience has been that has not been very transparent. And then they've ended up in a situation they've spent a heck of a lot of money than they first thought they were going to spend. But it's a very difficult question to give you a definitive answer. But it can be 50% cheaper all in. Absolutely, it was for us. But, I quite frequently get people saving 30%, 40% when you compare like for like costings all in.
Yeah, and I hear about the hidden costs on a daily basis. I mean, I had Kaylee from Fertility Mapper on season 1 of our podcast, and I know she's doing a lot of incredible work about, highlighting the costs and services in the UK and making, them more transparent. So, what outside of cost then, what other differences do you spot? Is the technology more advanced? Like, are you noticing anything else that is more positive by taking your fertility treatment abroad outside of price?
Yeah, I think when I first started this business, a lot of people came to me because of price. What I've noticed over the last couple of years, and I think it makes sense because I suppose the more people doing it, then the more people are talking about other benefits. And what I see now is people coming to me not just for price. So in fact, some people it's not about price at all. That's an added bonus. But cost is a huge one, obviously, still. But things like, for example, donation. If you look outside of your home country, you suddenly have got options around things like anonymity. And if you're a person of colour in the UK, very difficult to be matched to an egg donor. So you could be sat on a waiting list for a long time or forever. So by looking at other countries, you've got a lot more choice. It's quicker. They're doing a lot more fertility treatment in mainland Europe than we are here because, like I said earlier, people are flying from other countries. So, while you can't definitively say you're going to have higher success by going abroad, like a lot of people say to me, I know going abroad has better success rates. And I'm like, we don't know that actually. Like, we don't know that because everybody measures things in different ways. But what you could say is that because of the volume of like cycles they're doing, because of the people coming from outside of the countries as well as the people inside of their countries, they're doing a lot more of this stuff. So I feel like, and I know doctors have said to some of my clients in the UK that they're more advanced. Mm-hmm. They also are more advanced, I believe, because they're offering different options around things like testing and treatment. So giving people more choices of things to try as well. For some people, being away from home is actually really lovely. Like, if you pick the right destination for you, then actually you're not at the clinic the whole time. So you can still enjoy being away. I know it's not the same as just going on holiday, but there's no reason why you can't still enjoy the place that you're in. And if it's a sunny place and you like sunshine, that's really nice just in terms of how that experience is. What else? Customer service. I feel like I get a lot of people come to me who've had poor customer service experiences, and again at the right clinic, I feel like the customer service is better. And yeah, I think there's lots of reasons outside of cost. I think cost is a reason why people maybe start to look at it. People not getting answers, people having multiple failed cycles with a clinic in their home country, and then thinking, hang on, like what else is out there? I suppose it suddenly gives you a lot more choice, which can be overwhelming too, but it gives you a lot more choice that you hadn't sort of considered maybe before.
And just going back to what you touched upon then about, enjoying the time abroad. And I suppose, and I know you wouldn't have any sort of proof, but if there was any research done in the mental health impact on that, taking yourself, because I know people that have had to go for certain things on their lunch break. I spoke to one lady who worked in a school. They were that unsupportive, she took them to tribunal because she actually was pressured that much to get there and back on a lunch break that she collapsed in the car park.
Oh.
And she ended up taking the school to tribunal because there just wasn't that support. So I suppose there maybe is, a case to say that, you're away for 1 week, 10 days having this treatment, you're sort of offline, you're not on the rat race, you're not doing school runs or, running family round, you're focused. And maybe, I don't know, have you experienced anybody's feedback that's helped them emotionally, mentally?
Yeah, I mean, and I think the great thing about it is you've got options. So like my clients from America, they would go for the full thing. But I've also had, as in like abroad, they wouldn't, you can, if you want to, cut down your time abroad and do some of that before you go, some of that initial monitoring, which I can help people with as well. But I've had clients who have been able to take work with them, and that's really made it accessible for them to go and do it in the first place. But others who have gone, I've got 2 weeks off, 10 days off, a week off, whatever, and I'm just going to go and switch off. And in between the clinic visits, they've said like, we actually had a really, really lovely time. And another thing that I forgot to mention, reasons why people go abroad, which is huge, and I think that's that accessibility piece as well. So around things like BMI, donation, people who are in same-sex female relationships and the hoops they have to jump through on the NHS and things like that. So accessibility is a big one. Not just on the NHS, but also privately. Suddenly, if you look outside of your home country to different countries, then they've got different legal frameworks and things. And so, you've got more choice to be able to try and get, I suppose, the treatment that you need as well, that for some people isn't possible here, either on the NHS or in their home countries, wherever they live, on their state-funded healthcare service, versus kind of, going abroad and being able to look for a country where they can support you with where you are at, or have got the experience in things like higher BMI. It's not just about finding a clinic that is willing to treat you. It's about finding a clinic that's safe, but also finding a clinic that does a lot of treatment for people in bigger bodies, so that that they've got that expertise, because things like medication often needs tweaking, and a certain type of protocols and things like that are suitable. Because what I find happens a lot here is I get a lot of people have been told it's their weight, and then they have gone abroad through me, through the right clinics, and then they've uncovered what the problem was, and it was nothing to do with weight. And one of them was able to go on and successfully conceive without IVF. And the other one, they found out that her cervix was closed, so it would never have worked anyway. So had they not have found that out, and had she just accepted that it was her weight, then they're in now a position where they've got a really good chance of fertility treatment working. So all too often, things are blamed without any evidence, because they're just trying to get you off the NHS waiting list, and they haven't got the time and they haven't got the resources to be able to investigate things properly. And I think people are getting wise to that and going, and not everybody can afford private treatment home or abroad, so that's a privilege. But actually, if people can, they're thinking, hang on a minute, like, we're not just going to accept that. We want to look into it and want to get proper answers, because again, loads of my clients, they get told unexplained infertility, and as if it's a diagnosis, and it's just not. It just means that they haven't got to the bottom of things yet. So I think people go abroad seeking answers, seeking more opinions. They're not spending 250 quid every time they talk to a clinic to get some opinions. So it just, it's attractive for people to be able to do that. And because you can do video consultations and stuff, you don't have to go out to the clinics. It's become a lot more accessible to kind of speak to clinics and see what you think first before committing to anything. And I suppose the more people that do it, and the more people that talk about it, and the more people that have success, then the more people do it, talk about it, the more success. But I think language barrier is a common concern for people, which I understand, and I think it is important that is right. We can't expect people to be, the same as us, because it's not their first language, but certainly,
work together.
Yeah, and there are also lots of clinics where they are very fluent.
Yeah. Emma, it's been absolutely incredible speaking with you today, and I'm sure we'll do many things with FEM as the year goes on. Where can our listeners find you? Where are you most active? I know you're going to pop some things in the show notes, but if you can just tell the listeners where they can find you and can get some more support from you, that'd be fantastic.
Thank you. So if you are on Instagram, then come and find me. I'm on @Your IVF Abroad. I will be at the Fertility show, depending on when you listen to this, in May 25. So I'm there on the Sunday, so do come and say hi. I'd love to meet you. But also I've got my own podcast, which is the IVF Abroad podcast, if you want to learn more. And I've got a free training for you as well, which I will send to Steph to pop in the show notes. But if you're listening and can remember, that's on yourivfabroad.co.uk/free masterclass. And that's a perfect free piece of training if you want to like learn more from the things that we've talked about today. And it's there to kind of help you to look at what your options are to overcome the obstacles that you might be facing in your home country, so that you can move forward like on your terms and timescales, and just understand what your options are. Or even if you're not facing obstacles, but you're thinking, actually, I just want to learn a little bit more about going abroad first to work out if it's right for me or for us, then that would be the perfect kind of first step. So I'll send that to Steph to pop in the show notes. But yeah, come and find me on Instagram if you're there. Come and say hi. And I think my podcast is probably a really like well, it's free, and it's a really useful tool as well for people when they're wanting to kind of just start to learn some more about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emma, and thank you for everything that you do, and thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you. Bye.